All right, Devils win this one 3-2 in overtime against Nashville. Hischier with an absolute snipe to win this one. This game was interesting one. It was a back and forth. This felt like it was more about survival. Losing Jack Hughes was pretty of a tough blow there. Letting a goal early was another one that Devils seem to find themselves again in that situation where they go down early in the game. And I think just being able to find a way to get 2 points in a game that you couldn't walk away from this game getting nothing, right? I think Bryce exaggerated it a lot, or he mentioned it a lot in the game, where you needed to be able to get points from this game and at least bring it into overtime and hopefully get the 2 points, which they did, because during this game I think you had the Islanders winning, you had Boston winning, you had Montreal winning, you had Pittsburgh winning, so everyone around them is stacking points. And so this felt like one of those games where you couldn't just, it didn't matter how you win, right? You couldn't afford to let any points go, and you needed to get the 2. You actually needed the 1, really wanted the 2, but you just needed at least that 1, which again they were able to get the 2 points, which was good. Especially Jack Hughes goes down early, like I said, doesn't return, and that really puts the whole team in a bit of a different structure, right? Because Jack Hughes is such an important part of the team that when he's gone, different people have to step up and take on different roles and things. So it's a bit of a tough adjustment, which they were able to do, right? You got to give them credit, they were able to do. And I think this game, again, starting the way we've seen it start too often, Devils give up that first goal. And the opening 5 minutes, it's frustrating because right away you're thinking here we go again, right? Here we go again. And I think what stood out to me, and I think the broadcast definitely kept talking about it a lot, was they said the Devils played pretty well in that first period. And I think if you're looking from a shot total, I think overall they're right. You look at that period, they were playing, they didn't get disappointed. They didn't look or play disappointed, and sometimes you can tell when teams are playing deflated, right? Even we saw tonight the Oilers went down I think 3 goals in the first period, and they let in a goal within the first 10 seconds of the game. And you still got to battle, you still got to play. There's a lot of hockey left to go, and the Devils had that, I guess, a mature approach to being able to combat going down early. And I think for me, that first goal, honestly, I feel like Markstrom should have had it. He played a little deep in the crease there, and it's just right now, he has to be one of the best players on the ice. And honestly, this year he's almost sometimes been the opposite. And I think this stretch, if they're going to make the playoffs, he's really going to have to be a main reason, or Jake Allen or someone, one of the goaltenders there is going to have to step up. But it looks like the coaching staff and everyone there in the organization seems pretty hell-bent on getting Markstrom the majority of the starts. So that seems like the direction that they're all going to go. But they outshot Nashville 13-7 in the first. And again, it was just execution. I think they're doing a lot of things right, but they're just not finishing 5-on-5. And that's kind of been the story lately, right? That Nashville goal itself, and it wasn't some crazy breakdown either. It came off a low cycle, those puck battles, and then there was just a little bit of too many Predators got access to the crease, I guess you can say. And again, I think that Markstrom played the wraparound a little too deep in the net. He was kind of flat along the goal line, and maybe if he came out just a little bit, he probably would have been able to deflect that rebound. Because I think it went in on that second shot, or just some kind of puck battle there in front. And we got Michael McCarron gets that inside positioning, and I just think there's not enough bodies there to be making it difficult for the Predators to get some shots off, and also in general for other teams. I think this has been a thing. There's not a lot of like toughness in front of the net sometimes, right? We need people to be afraid to go to the front of the net, and ends up being a goal. But I think for me the one of the biggest differences in this game compared to the Winnipeg game was that in the second period, and Bryce mentioned this in the second intermission, was don't fall apart. And I don't think they did. They didn't fall apart. Protect the middle. Don't overpinch. Don't make bad line changes. Communicate with each other. Stick to stick. passes, tape-to-tape passes. Like, don't be just throwing the puck up off the board and not looking in case the D-man isn't there, and have support, just it's because I think right now it's kind of tense with the Devils, where you could tell, and everyone can tell, like they're playing kind of for their playoff lives, right? Like I know the Olympic break's coming up, and I don't know, I think they have 30 games after the break, but they're pretty far behind in terms of just how close the conferences and the races, that if they can't go on another bad stretch of games, and that's I think that's something every Devils fans know, they can't go bad on another bad stretch of games. And I think in the second period, those back and forth hockey, right? I thought that the hockey was pretty good. The Nashville had a couple of shifts where they got the Devils in there. They kind of had them hemmed in there, but the Devils were able to just battle back and defend inside the dots, and close the passing lanes, and don't just give up wave after wave of odd man rushes. And we saw that at Winnipeg, right? It's so being able to just have that step forward in battling back and playing calm and playing under pressure, and knowing that you can't just break down and be reckless, right? I think not being reckless is a main thing that the Devils have fallen into, right? They'll get reckless with giving up too many odd man rushes and forcing things, or being too aggressive, or just not, especially in the D zone, like they're not throwing the puck out the zone, and they're throwing it up the middle and things like that, right? And especially now without Jack Hughes, the whole game changes, the whole Devils structure changes. It's no longer like a high scoring game, you think, because I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of scoring in the game without someone like Jack there. You could start to feel it like, hey, this might be more of a 2-1 game, 3-2, definitely heading to overtime. And I think the power play just doesn't have that same juice without Jack. So, you could definitely see it. And I think the Devils had to be a little bit more patient and definitely more structured, and be okay with kind of winning ugly, And I think this team has struggled with that. I think they've not been able to grind it out on a lot of occasions where, it's just because Jack's been out, Luke's been out, top guys have been out, top D-men have been out, and they haven't been able to just get gritty goals, or, be able to get scoring depth from a lot of other players. And so that's been a thing that has cost them a lot of games, right? But in this game, I think, you look at that goal from Hamilton, which, Dougie, definitely great goal there. And honestly, I've been not the biggest fan of his play this year, and I don't even know if he's going to be with the team for too much longer, whether, he'll get traded at the deadline or he'll sign somewhere else at the end of the season or whatever. But you at least want him to gain that confidence in the stretch here, to at least give us as a team a chance. And I think that, you look at the rookie, I don't want to butcher his name, but I just call him Lenny. But he doesn't force anything. He throws the puck. He makes smart decisions. And Amanda Stein said at the end of the game during the post-game presser with Sheldon Keefe that he definitely feels comfortable. He doesn't feel like he is lost out there or looking like a rookie. He definitely is feeling like he belongs, and that's huge. That's a huge thing for the depth of this team. And if they can get just another rookie under the radar to perform well, that could be a staple with the team. That would be really, really good. And in this play, he cuts inside, recognizes he has time and space, and he finds Dougie creeping in, and great shot by Dougie there to finish it off. And hopefully that kind of, again, gets him in that feel-good confidence mode of letting his shot go and trusting his shot. Because sometimes when you're playing, I grew up, I was a goalie, right? But it's the same thing, goalie, player, just in general in hockey. It's like, or any athlete, it sometimes takes a little bit of confidence to be able to then start getting into rhythm and start playing well and start just feeling it and start to not think about your game. Because whenever you're out there, especially as a goalie, growing up, I was always taught, you never want to be thinking about how you play when you play, right? It's just you react, it's a game, and you're out there and you just play. And I feel like sometimes whenever the Devils are in a bit of a slump, and you got top guys who aren't performing as well as they know they can or should be in any team, in any situation, at any level too, they start to think about, what are you doing wrong? What am I doing wrong here? Where should I be? Am I not shooting the right way? Is the way that the puck is releasing off my stick not the right way? And all these thoughts, kind of get into your head about just stuff that normally when you're in a rhythm, you don't even think about it, right? You're just kind of going and you're playing. So again, I think that's something that Dougie and a bunch of guys, I mean, Palat, right? Like, good for him that he scored with the Islanders, but when he was with us, he just couldn't buy a goal. And sometimes when you're a top guy and you're someone who does produce, it's a little jarring, and it kind of messes with your head a little bit, where you're thinking like, I should be scoring more. I have in the past, and it's just not going in for me now. So sometimes you get a little like just bitten, or snake bitten there, right? That's what I'm trying to say. You get snake bitten with not being able to get a goal or perform in the way that you should. And another example of that, I think, with this team is Markstrom, right? The goaltending, I think, this year, just being flat out honest, it has been like a disappointment. And I say that sounds harsh, but at the same time, I think the reason why Devils fans feel that way is because of how good we saw Markstrom, and Allen too. But Markstrom's our starter and he's our guy. He's the one we paid, and Fitzy paid for the extension and all that. But it's the guy. He's the one that is supposed to be the staple, the foundation, the rock. I mean, the one that can ground the team and hold the team in it whenever they are going through struggles and tough stretches here. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of the season, like, again, not to sound harsh about it, but he's kind of been one of the reasons why we haven't done well. He's been one of the reasons why we have struggled, because we can't trust our goaltending back there, and he is our number one guy. And so, like, what do you do whenever your top guy that were planning on riding out a lot of the games is struggling, and you have to kind of mix in Jake Allen here and there? It's tough, right? And I feel like this is one of the games where he played, one of the better games he has in a while. I think his rebound control was pretty good. I feel like what I really liked about him was his glove was he was seeing the puck well, right? One of the things I find a flaw, I guess, with Markstrom, and this is just me, I mean, I coach goalies and stuff like that, but I mean, I'm not gonna try to tell an NHLer how to do his job or whatever, but I just feel like one of the things I noticed about him playing the position is like the way he travels left to right, movement wise, on rebounds, on second chances, third chances, around the net, around the crease, is through his butterfly slides. He travels, because he's a big goalie and it makes sense, right? But he'll travel left to right, being on the ice, on his knees. A lot of goalies who aren't, you look at a UC Saros, definitely a lot smaller goalie, he will shuffle T-push, hold his feet. A lot of other goalies now, I think the new trend nowadays is to hold your feet. I think Markstrom sometimes gets himself in trouble in second and third opportunities, or 2-on-1 situations where if he bites on a shot, he's already down. And if you make the pass, he's going to butterfly slide across, and sometimes you just don't have enough push or power to get over there. And second and especially third chances, he's out. He's out of the play because he's already on his knees. He can't get there quick enough. He doesn't have the proper, leverage to make the save in terms of him being down and out. And, if as opposed to if he was holding his feet, he could at least get across, set and ready. And he does like to challenge and play a little bit aggressively. So sometimes it causes him to be in tough positions, right? But I think this game, when he was seeing the puck well, catching the puck, he made a couple of really good glove saves in a row. And I think that you need that for the Devils to be able to make some kind of run, to be somewhat in it in the playoff race. And I just think Markstrom just has to give them a chance to win every night. Every night it's go time now, right? At this point, there are no more. There's not a whole lot of buffer for having that terrible 9-0 game that he had, and so like. It's just an important time of the season. It's an important stretch where if you want to make the playoffs, he's going to have to be reliable. Jake Allen's going to have to be reliable. So, and I think this game he did. I think this game he gave them a really good chance to win, right? And so now going to the third period, I think the third period definitely was a bit tense. I think each team, and Nashville isn't exactly like playing incredible hockey either on their end. I don't think their record is incredible. I think this third period, at least for the Devil side of it, there was a lot of like, do not make that mistake, right? Don't make the stupid mistakes. Don't give them an easy one. This game was pretty hard. Goals were hard to come by this game, and it was pretty gritty. And I think that you just didn't want to see the Devils give up an easy goal, easy chance. And, whenever that happens, there's that level of just being deflated. The momentum shifts and everything. So I think the Devils did a good job, stayed patient. They stayed good defensively. They got rewarded. I think Jesper Bratt's tying goal, it comes off exactly the kind of detail you want to see. There was puck pressure, winning battles, not giving up on the play, and Mercer stays on the puck. Bratt gets the look, reads a goal, and man, what like finally he scores on one of these like breakaway chances he gets. I know Jack had one a couple games ago. Bratter had a couple breakaways, and he just one of them he lost the puck or he wasn't able to elevate it. This one finally he was able to get the goal and become score and be the Bratter that we know when he is in those situations. So that was one incredible highlight reel goal for him, just unbelievable goal. And then we go into overtime. At least we get the point now. So after getting that point, it's like, good, we got the point. That helps the Devils move forward in the right direction. And this was just, I think, Nico Hischier taking ownership of the game into his own hands. A bit of a risky play to just kind of go full slap shot, right? And if that thing misses, like they're saying in the broadcast, if that thing misses, it's going the other way, and we got another odd man rush the other way. And just absolute laser, right? But this is something that I do want to get into about just like throughout this year, and I feel like throughout the past couple of years, the Devils have this habit, and I feel like it comes from this European style of hockey. You get a bunch of guys, I think, from the Europe style play, and you see that with Hischier, Bratt, and everything and Meyer, and sometimes they're too much, I think, looking too much for the fancy play. In overtime, I know the big MO of the Devils in overtime is puck possession, and you see it in every overtime they're in. They're always like keeping the puck for however long or whatever. They'll circle around, take it out of the zone, come back in, circle around, find a good scoring chance, try to shoot it, get the rebound, circle around again. It's like they constantly are trying to just keep the puck, keep possession, which is great. And I think that's the name of the game in overtime. The other team can't score if they don't have the puck for the most part. And so, it's you need that, right? You need that possession. But I think there's also something to be said about you got to get shots. I think I would go on a limb and say probably majority of the Devils fans out there, especially when you watch the games live, because there's a lot of things you're able to see on live that maybe not be able to catch on the broadcast. Like there's a lot of chances that the Devils pass up in prime scoring locations just so that they can get a pass to the circle, left or right circle dot, and like they want that one timer, that fancy bang bang pass play in the net. And I get that the notion of wanting to move the goalie left to right to get him off angle and all that stuff. But sometimes, man, like you just got to shoot. And I feel like that in that 8-game stretch where they had, I think, where they were winning a lot of games, I think they were 8-1 or whatever, beginning the season so far long ago. That I feel like was a change that I was so excited about. I was like, man, they're actually starting to shoot the puck, and they're shooting it, and like they have this mentality of shoot first. And that kind of, for some reason, every year there's periods of times where they have it, and then they get some goals, and then they start to get confidence, maybe a little cocky, and then they start thinking, okay, we can just do more fancy shit again, and it doesn't work. And I just think that like sometimes when you don't have the Jacks, or like if Bratt is not there, like sometimes it's almost a blessing in disguise when you realize like, oh, we don't have our fancy playmakers, we just got to shoot. Because I remember when like Tatar was on the team, and you had a guy who, it was like his MO to like get greasy goals and be in front of the net, and he did that for us, especially during that Ranger series a couple years back. So that's the kind of stuff that like I definitely want to see more from the team, especially as we go on the stretch where it's not going to be pretty every game, right? So I think the positive of this game, I mean, they get the 2 points, incredible. I think they had a great mindset. They didn't fall apart in the second period like Bryce was worried about. They didn't spiral. They didn't implode. So they managed to, they managed the middle of the ice way better than they have in recent games. I think even Sheldon Keefe talked about like, once Jack went out, the bench became a little chaotic, and you have to juggle certain lines, and he tightened the rotation a little bit to stabilize the game. So that just tells you everything about like how much this game was a bit of a grind and all that. But I think, zooming out, this win, it doesn't like fix things. It's another, hey, another brick you stack, right? You gotta keep stacking bricks and keep stacking it, and because they're still behind in the standings, right? There's still a big mountain to climb. But I think if you can just win, I think the name of the game every game has to just be get points, right? Just get points, because if it becomes a thing of like getting discouraged if you go down, I still think, like, especially when you go on this road trip and you're playing teams that aren't in our conference or division or whatever, it's just the matter of getting points. You just need to bring it to overtime, deal with the second point after that, but just get into overtime or win in regulation. But like, you got to be able to just put yourself in a position to still be in it, because I think it sucks, right? It sucks when you already know you're not making the playoffs, and as a fan base it sucks, as a team I'm sure it sucks, and I just think the Devils really this year was such a weird year, and it still is weird. I mean, Jack is out again with an injury. Hopefully it's not serious, but it's just been an odd year for all that. But I just feel like there is pieces of the Devils that if they execute properly and they execute based on the personnel they have and stick to an identity that is is conducive to the roster they have. They're not going to be a Tampa or a Colorado. They're not going to be fancy. They're not going to be, you don't have Jack. And even when he was with the team, he was hurt. He wasn't 100%. You don't have Luke. And a bunch of our guys also are banged up. They're coming off injuries. And so, like, we got to be not afraid. The Devils have to not be afraid to, like, get dirty goals and get just offensive chances that are, it's just about, like, throwing more pucks in net and just wearing other teams out, and not get discouraged when the shot total is like 30-18 and you're tied or even down by 1. I still think that there is value in being able to just keep just like hammering teams and to outlast them, and hopefully execute on the offensive side of it all. But overall, big win. Like, it's still in it, and I think as we go into Ottawa, it's going to be a tough matchup, but especially with Jack status up in the air, we'll find more out. I mean, at the time of this recording, it's right after the game, so we'll see what happens after. But big win, and let's just hope they can keep this ball rolling.